The woods were deep, dark. Sun could not penetrate the thick canopy. Ancient trees gnarled and twisted, clawed at the sky. Their roots, thick as a man's torso, snaked through the undergrowth. 3 children, oblivious to the danger, skipped along the path. Peter, the eldest, led the way. His sister Mary followed close behind. Little Timmy, barely 5, stumbled along in their wake. They were heading to their grandmother's house on the other side of the woods. A shortcut, their father had said. A foolish mistake. The air grew heavy. The scent of pine needles, once fresh, now carried a metallic tang. The laughter of the children faded. A strange silence descended upon the woods. The shadows lengthened. The path, once clear, became swallowed by the encroaching gloom. Peter felt a shiver crawl up his spine. He reached back for Mary's hand.
She was no longer there. I called out her name.
Only silence answered him.
Fear, cold and sharp, pierced his heart.
She lived in the heart of the woods, a creature of shadow and rot, the witch. Her skin, the color of dead leaves, clung to her bones. Her eyes, 2 black pits, burned with unnatural hunger. Her fingers, long and gnarled, ended in claws, sharp as razors. She moved through the woods like a phantom, her bare feet leaving no trace upon the damp earth. She could smell fear, taste it on the air. And the children, lost and alone, were ripe with it. She had been watching them. Their laughter, so full of life, grated on her ears. Their innocence, a stark contrast to the darkness that consumed her, enraged her. They were intruders in her domain. Their fear, a sweet nectar, beckoned her.
She would feast on their terror before she devoured their flesh. Her tongue, long and black, flicked out, tasting the air. The scent of their fear was intoxicating. She moved towards them, silent as death. Her ragged dress, woven from the hair of her victims, rustled softly against the undergrowth. Her long white hair, matted and filthy, trailed behind her like a shroud. She savored their terror. It fueled her, empowered her. She was the nightmare that haunted these woods, and tonight the children would become part of her legend.
Peter, clutching Timmy's hand, stumbled through the undergrowth. Thorns tore at his clothes. Branches whipped at his face. He could hear Timmy sobbing behind him. He dared not stop. He could feel the witch's presence like a cold breath on his neck. He knew she was hunting them, playing with them, savoring their fear. He caught a glimpse of movement in the shadows, a flicker of something white, her hair.
He pulled Timmy harder, urging him to run faster. But Timmy, exhausted and terrified, tripped and fell. I tried to lift him, but the boy was too heavy. I looked back. The shadows were closing in. I could hear her now. A low, guttural growl, like that of a wild animal.
He had to leave me. He knew it. It was the only way he could save himself. But he couldn't. He couldn't abandon his little brother. He pulled me up again, dragging me along. The growling grew louder, closer. He could smell her now, a sickening stench of decay and rot. She was almost upon us.
The witch descended upon them, a whirlwind of claws and teeth. Peter screamed, shoving Timmy behind him. He knew it was futile, but he had to protect his brother, even in the face of certain death. The witch laughed, a sound that cracked the night. Her claws ripped through Peter's shirt, tearing into his flesh. He fell back, screaming in pain.
Timmy, paralyzed with fear, could only watch as the witch tore into me. Her teeth, sharp as shards of glass, ripped through flesh and bone. My screams were cut short.
The woods fell silent, save for the sickening sounds of consumption. The witch, her face smeared with blood, looked down at Timmy. Her eyes, black and bottomless, stared into his soul.
I tried to run, but my legs wouldn't move. I was frozen, trapped in a nightmare. The witch, her lips curled into a grotesque smile, reached for me. Her touch was ice. Death. I closed my eyes, waiting for the end.
He emerged from the darkness, a figure of myth and legend. Tall, broad-shouldered, his face hidden beneath a wide-brimmed hat. He carried an axe, its blade gleaming in the moonlight.
Her eyes narrowed as she turned to face him. She recognized him, the witch-catcher, the bane of her kind.
Your reign of terror ends tonight, witch. His voice was cold, hard, like the steel of his axe. You will answer for your crimes.
He had been hunting her for years, driven by a personal vendetta. She had taken his wife, his daughter, consumed them both in her insatiable hunger. He had vowed revenge, dedicated his life to eradicating her kind. He had studied their ways, learned their weaknesses. He was their judge, their executioner, and tonight he would have his vengeance. The witch lunged at the hunter, claws outstretched. He sidestepped her attack with ease. His axe swung, a silver arc in the moonlight. She dodged, hissing in fury. The battle had begun, a dance of death between man and monster.
The hunter moved with surprising speed and agility. His axe, a blur of motion, kept the witch at bay. He was relentless, driven by his thirst for revenge.
Enraged, she fought back with savage ferocity, a whirlwind of claws and teeth.
But the hunter was ready for her. He anticipated her every move, countered her every attack. He was her equal in strength, her superior in skill. Her claws raked across his arm, tearing through his leather coat. He ignored the pain. His focus remained unwavering. He would not falter. Not now. Not when he was so close to achieving his goal. The hunter's axe caught the witch across the chest, tearing through her ragged dress. She shrieked, a sound that echoed through the woods. A deep, jagged wound opened on her chest, oozing black, viscous blood. She staggered back, clutching at the wound.
The hunter pressed his advantage, his axe a silver blur in the moonlight. He aimed for her head. A killing blow, but she was too quick. She ducked beneath his swing, her claws raking across his leg. He stumbled, pain shooting up his leg.
The witch, seeing an opportunity, lunged again. Her claws aimed for his throat. He raised his axe in defense, the blade catching her claws. Sparks flew as steel met bone. The force of the impact sent a jolt through his arm. He would not be defeated. Not by this creature. Not after coming so far. He pushed back, his muscles straining with the effort. He forced her back, his axe never wavering. He was the shield that protected the innocent, the sword that punished the guilty, and he would not rest until the witch was vanquished. The battle raged on. Hunter versus hunted, man versus monster. The witch, weakened but still dangerous, fought with the fury of a cornered animal. She knew she was losing, but she would not go down without a fight. She would take the hunter with her, drag him down into the darkness with her.
She lunged again, her claws tearing at his chest.
He blocked her attack, but she managed to sink her teeth into his arm. He gritted his teeth, ignoring the searing pain.
He slammed the butt of his axe into her face. She reeled back, her nose shattered. Black blood gushed from the wound. She shrieked in pain and fury. But her shrieks were weaker now, her movements slower. She was fading. The hunter, his body screaming in protest, gathered his remaining strength. He raised his axe high above his head. This was it, the final blow, the culmination of years of hunting, years of pain, years of waiting for this moment. He brought the axe down in a swift, brutal arc. The witch, too weak to dodge, could only watch as the blade descended upon her. The axe cleaved through the witch's skull, splitting her head in two. She crumpled to the ground, her body twitching for a moment before falling still. The woods fell silent. The only sound was the hunter's ragged breathing. He stood over the witch's corpse, his chest heaving, his body racked with pain. He had won, but the victory felt hollow. His wife and daughter were gone, and nothing could bring them back.
He looked down at Timmy, who was still huddled on the ground, his eyes wide with shock. He sheathed his axe, offering the boy a hand. "It's over now," he said, his voice hoarse. "You're safe."
Timmy, trembling, took his hand. He looked at the witch's corpse, then back at the hunter. "Is she really dead?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper.
The hunter nodded. "Yes, she's dead. She can't hurt you anymore." He helped Timmy to his feet, his grip firm but gentle. "Come on," he said. "Let's get you out of here." He picked up Peter's body, slinging it over his shoulder. He owed it to the boy to return him to his family, even in death, even if it brought him no peace. They walked out of the woods, the hunter leading the way, Timmy trailing behind him. The silence of the forest was heavy, oppressive. It was the silence of death, the silence of secrets buried deep beneath the earth, the silence of a nightmare finally ended. Timmy, exhausted and traumatized, clung to the hunter's hand. He felt safe with him, protected, but the images of the night, the blood, the screams, would forever be etched into his memory. They emerged from the woods into the pale light of dawn. The world seemed new, clean, untainted by the darkness that lurked within the forest. But Timmy knew that the darkness was still there, waiting. He would never look at the woods the same way again. They would forever be a place of fear, a place of death.
The hunter, his face etched with weariness and sorrow, looked down at Timmy. "Don't let the darkness consume you, boy," he said, his voice low. "Remember the light. Hold on to it." He turned and walked away, disappearing into the morning mist, his axe gleaming one last time in the sunlight. He was a ghost, a phantom, a memory of the night, and as he faded from sight, so too did the silence of the woods, replaced by the sounds of life, birds singing, wind rustling through the leaves. A new day had begun, but for Timmy, The horrors of the night would linger long after the sun had set,